Turan.
Okay. So, guys, welcome to OpenBMC user management introduction. Right. I'm Richard. I basically have 16 plus years experience, mainly in platform firmware, including UFI and BMC firmware kind of stuff. So, just for the sake of audience, right? And I'm going to start with the basic knowledge only. So I don't expect like people as to be, well versed in BMC or well versed in IPMI or Redfish name. But at least I'm under the impression that you might have heard about this word, right? IPMI, Redfish, Deepers, and OpenBMC. And when the slides are sent out, probably everything is having links. You can go ahead and refer those things. But just as few are just starting and we are playing around with Raspberry Pi kind of stuff, right? So earlier IPMI is our intelligent platform management, interface specification, specifically done to standardize the platform management subsystem, right, including monitoring, control, recovery, and inventory kind of stuff. So that's the way IPMA was started earlier, and now being Redfish being the open industry standard and the scalable approach using the RESTful interface. JSON, all those things. Now it is slowly getting more popular and trying to replace almost many people now started preferring Redfish over IPMA over LAN. But still, Redfish is not fully moved out of communication with the UFI firmware. So still IPMA is used there. So which is why if you see our OpenBMC stack is having both IPMI and Redfish, but we are also packaging in such a way that in case if you want IPMA, without IPMA you want to live with, you can have. And similarly, if people prefers doesn't need to have a Redfish just because they are directly communicating with UFA firmware alone, still that is also possible. So these are all is like OpenBMC intro, right? And dbus, basically many of our design is based on dbus, application to application sharing of IPC kind of mechanism. And there is another session by Patrick. Most probably he'll cover dbus interfaces, sdbus plus, all those things. But till such time, basically the intro what I want to give is assume that this is a easier way of IPC communication mechanism to communicate from one application to another application in a standardized API call. So you make a call, you'll get a response, and similarly you have an option to send out signals indicating saying that okay, I have a field like this and it has got been updated with so and so kind of stuff. So this is just for the sake of audience who are all new, right? And if you already know about all those things, then I think we can get started. So I'll try to cover sooner, right, so that we will have a lot of time for question and answers. But basically, the agenda will be, before going in depth, I just thought of giving, what are the design principles, why user management in OpenBMC has been done in certain particular way, kind of stuff, and then want to talk about the groups and privilege rules in OpenBMC, and we'll give one high-level architecture overview in terms of user management, and then we'll dig a little bit into the components and now how we are using the common user manager or stacked PAM, including the authorization flow. We'll see, and I also have references to the codes. So my main aim here is whoever is new, after looking at this specification, you can go ahead and look at the code, so that you yourself will be able to understand certain things with the slides kind of stuff. So that's what I'm trying to achieve. So having said that one, the basic design principles whatever we have are the difference between OpenBMC and earlier model, right? So earlier everything was IPMI centric. When I say IPMI centric means if you see a lot of other companies or even our own companies servers, all user login or everything will come to IPMI daemon or IPMI application, and IPMI application will authenticate the user saying that okay, he's so and so user, he's allowed to log in. So even if you are having a web UI, whatever the username password you send it to web UI will ultimately go to IPMI, then again it will get validated, then it will come there, right? So now, as you know, right, earlier when I talked, we wanted the OpenBMC to be a packaging kind of stuff. So today IPMI is there. Some people want to move out of IPMI and come only for Redfish. Some people are not even in Redfish, and tomorrow we don't know like if there is any other application which also requires user authentication or authorization kind of purpose. So with that in mind, what we designed was we wanted to say that all the interface specific applications. So when I say interface specific applications, means anything which is external user level interfacing applications, right? Which is IPMI, Redfish specification, whatever it is. So we thought that okay, let's segregate that as a separate item and maintain the user management in a separate daemon, so that whatever the application can come and talk to this common user management. We call it as a fast for user manager, and get all the authentication or authorization done accordingly. So that's a main basic design principle whatever we had in mind when we started this one. And in order to achieve that one, we wanted to have a generic API across for all interface facing applications, right? Like IPMA, Redfish kind of stuff. So we exposed a common dbus API to manage, a local user or remote user. And we even wanted to have a single dbus API to get details about local user or remote user info. So we thought that this will even benefit, so that if someone is logging in Redfish, Redfish application doesn't need to worry about okay, whether I have to take this path of authentication for local user or this path of authentication, separate path of authentication for remote user. Trying to get the user details should not be like a two different way. So what we thought is, application must call a single API, such that the lower end functionality has to take care about all those things and accordingly give us back the response data. So this is the next design principle what we had in mind, right? And dbus API was popular at that point of time, and we even were wondering like whether to use dbus API for a password updating or to use the regular PAM module, the Unix style kind of stuff. And a few of the reasons why we choose PAM was we thought that integrating generic applications through PAM is much easier. Or even if you go for a dbus API, also, we were under the impressions we may even need to write a certain PAM module in order to integrate the general or regular Linux-based application, like let's say XSH or kind of stuff, right? So we thought that PAM let PAM module take care about the real authentication work, and similarly for updating password, let's do it through PAM itself. And from security point of view, we thought not to show push the password in the dbus API if someone is just logging certain things mistakenly in the log, like monitoring reason or something like that. We thought okay, not to dump the password in that log kind of stuff. So thinking that in mind, we made PAM should be the stuff. And as I said, IPMI has to be supported. We needed to store the clear text password. Of course, we store it in encrypted form, but IPMI specification requires password to be decrypted back, so that it will be able to establish the session. But at the same time, there will be people who doesn't want IPMI just for security reason, or they are far ahead with Redfish kind of stuff. So we still provided a way such that if they want to decouple the IPMI, this activity, that is encrypting the password and storing it, should not happen. So that is also automatically taken care in the current layer. So this is also one of the design principle we had. And username, groups, privileges must be maintained in common user management. Other than that, whatever you want to tie the configuration with user management for the application should be maintained in the application itself. So if you say that one user has to do something extra, there should be some extra information which must be stored. We don't want to overload the common user, the fast user manager. The reason is because if every application wants to load like that, then fast user manager will be difficult to maintain. So what we thought is, other than these three items, whatever the data configuration data you have must be stored or maintained by the application, whichever is managing those things. So we thought that in that way, segregation of the interface specific application is also useful, and the interface specific configuration details will be stored only in those applications. So that's the reason, the whole design, whatever we are going to discuss, if you see, is following these design principles in mind. So any questions here?
Yeah, so have there been predefined privilege levels for the design principles?
Yes, so that I'll cover it in the next slide. Having said that one, then I'll move on to next slide. Okay. So these are the groups, but one of the stuff is we don't want to limit the number of groups, right? So if you want to go ahead and extend, you can still go ahead and extend. And the dbus interface API allows a way for us to extend, so that we know like how many groups we want to add or how many groups we want to execute, right? And privilege level, I'll cover it in the next slide again. So right now, this group, whatever we call, we want to define people saying that if a particular user should have access to SSH, then you should be a member of SSH group. Similarly, a user who is having IPMI, group under group, he'll be allowed to access the IPMI interface kind of stuff. So that's 4 different group name we created. But in reality, right now, if you see our OpenBMC management, whenever you create a user, we create a user automatically with all these 4 groups in mind. So we don't remove a user saying that okay, user A is belonging to only one group, or user B is belonging to another group kind of stuff. This is basically for two different reasons. At that point of time, there is no interface specific that is a standard to choose the group. So like, let's say that either Redfish nor IPMI does support that activity in a standard way. Yeah, earlier I know that in many of the server management, we allow people to access through web, or we allow them saying that only IPMI kind of stuff. But what we thought is, if that is the case needed, you can go to the interface specific application and disable your stuff. So we thought that okay, at this point of time it is not needed, but it is a place to grow, right? If there is any need, just shoot a mail to us. But we will be able to support this nature. So you can the backend already supports to change a particular user from all 4 groups to only one group, or you can remove the user from any of these groups. So the backend is already supporting it. Right now, the only thing what is not there is the front end, that is the user facing applications, doesn't support changing the group roles. So this is in terms of groups. Now, we have privilege roles also. And as of today, we support 4 roles. One is admin, operator, a user, and no access, right? And of course, admin can access everything in OpenBMC, including user management, network, and all configurations. He's having the full administrative access, right? And operator, control the basic operations, but he'll be able to do something extra than admin, but lesser than greater than user, but lesser than admin. So user is also defined. Now, actually, if you look closely, right, this is actually so close to IPMI privilege role mapping, but this is not intentional. What we thought is this is a regular admin, operator, user, or no access kind of stuff is a regular stuff, right? So even though IPMI just used that one, we thought that it still makes sense to go ahead and have these privilege roles, and we defined these privilege roles. And these privilege roles are meant to be changed both from Redfish, that is user interfacing application, and are from IPMA also. And the way Redfish allows is, Redfish is having the code is having an internal mapping, because we call certain things in Redfish called as configure manager, or all those role specific stuff. So there is a mapper in Redfish code, that is the BMC web code, where when we read about a user information, we know that if it is an admin user, then automatically we populate the roles like configure manager and all the configure user, all those kind of stuff, and accordingly we use there. So yes, to answer your question, yes, we support privilege role, and privileges for the user can be changed. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, moving on then. So this is the higher level architecture overview, right? So at this point of time,
before going there, I have one question. So since
sure.
you talked about users, so is there any mandatory user account needs to be there?
No.
Okay.
So you cannot remove UID 0. That's Linux stuff, but that does not mean that root user must be login into the system. So from security point of it, we still provide a flag. We call it as enable root account kind of stuff. So which is currently in our OpenBMC package. If you go to for debugging image, we enabled it. But actually, you can disable it, and you can have a BMC image without any user account itself.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so this is a whole architecture overview, right, from user management point of it. So this one will not be able to give you the full details, right? But I thought that to start with the high level, then go internal to the components. So that's the reason I just flash this slide, right? So basically, there are few components. We will cover each and everything again in the successive slides, but the common user management, whatever I talked, is this Phosphor user manager. So this is responsible for creating or deleting user, whatever it is, and it exposes all this information through dbus API calls. So you can make a dbus call from either your IPMI or from your web server or Redfish, to create a user or to delete a user kind of stuff, or you can even query a lot of details from the Phosphor user manager. So having said this one, for logging purpose, we still rely on PAM modules. So like, let's say that when someone tries to log in, they have to use this PAM module and log in. So I have a separate slide again there, and we will cover in depth. But in high level, these are the two major modules, right? One is the Phosphor user manager, another is the stacked PAM. Is the backbone of all these user managements to function. So, and right, always applications can come and make a dbus call and verify, okay, what is the user roles it should have, or what is the group role it should have, and accordingly, whenever someone is trying to log in, it can respond back. Or another method is applications can catch this user information, and what they can do is actually they can monitor the dbus signals. So this is how today both IPMI and Redfish is implemented. So what will happen is both IPMI and Redfish, when it started, it will do one dbus call just to make sure that whatever the catch the IPMI is having is still latest when compared with Phosphor user manager. Otherwise, it will sync as per the Phosphor user manager. And immediately after that one, it will register for these signals. So now what happens is, if someone is changing the user from Redfish, IPMA also will be get notified saying that a new user has been added, and that user is having admin privilege, and he's having access to SSH, IPMI, Redfish, all those things kind of stuff. So basically, this is like a catching mechanism. So the reason why we went this for this purpose was we wanted to improve the performance stuff. So we don't want to unnecessarily for each and every login to go to Phosphor user manager and make the call, right? So this is the reason which we do the catching. And as of today, yeah, both Redfish and IPMI does the same thing. So it will catch, and it will be always in sync when I say catch. And again, when we say catch, we need to know who is the main stuff, right? So Phosphor user manager is still the main authority. Whenever there is a sync miss, whatever is in the fast for user manager will be overwritten in the caching location. So we still maintain that one. The main purpose of cache here is to speed up the authentication or querying about the user details kind of stuff. Okay. So
how about external accounts like LDAP and Active Directory?
Yes, so that is also there. I'll come to that also. But even that one, in external accounts, you don't need to have a way to directly talk about the user, right? Because it can be created outside our BMC system itself. But we still use PAM. And using that one we authenticate. So I'll cover that in the next coming slides. Okay. So now there are two, as I said, there are two major components in user management, right? One is fast for user manager, another is the stacked PAM, right? So again, fast for user manager just uses the Unix style. So actually, if you look at the code, we are just basically using the Unix execution of add user or del user or whatever it is, right? And just adding those things into the etc password or etc shadow files accordingly, kind of stuff. So we still support a LDAP configuration to answer your question. And in this same repo, fast for user manager repo itself, we have something called as fast for LDAP configuration daemon, which takes care about getting the details about open LDAP or Active Directory related details. And we also have something called as privilege mapping. So when you go for LDAP, you basically verifies the authentication, but you still need to know the authorization, right? So we have a privilege mapping where you'll be able to tell saying that if it is this account group, then he should have admin privilege or he should have operator privilege kind of stuff. So those is also getting defined, and using that one, you will be able to log in for that information. So this is also as of today supported, and code everything exists for LDAP, including Open LDAP or Active Directory. Now, faster user manager again, we wanted to define the interface in common manner, so that if you look at our fast for dbus interfaces, XYZ OpenBMC project /user, so whatever all the dbus interfaces, that is what it has to, it mandatorily must expose or implement. Now, having said that one, let's say that tomorrow you don't want to follow this Unix style management, or you want to have a different user manager service. You can still plug out this module and add your own module, provided as long as you are exposing the interfaces, whatever is specified in the dbus interface. If you are having an implementation for all those dbus APIs, then things will just work fine. So in reality, we have SSD support, which again allows us for automatically, it's a service using which you can maintain your local user or LDAP or KRB5, all those things, right? So there is also a support for that one. In the reference section, I have even given the path. Right now, that is not in our community code base. It is still maintained as a separate, but still out in open. But based on the interest, we can just again port it. But the point here is, faster user manager is one such stuff. As long as if you think that you have a different style of user management you need to happen, and as long as this dbus interface APIs are done, it's interchangeable. So this is from faster user manager point of view. Now coming to stacked PAM. So the reason why I said again is stacked PAM is, we are using multiple PAM modules in stacked form in order to achieve whatever we want to achieve, right? As you said, we wanted LDAP, so we use NSS PAM LDAP module also, so that it will be able to go ahead and verify in the LDAP server whether they are, authenticate the LDAP user and get back as a result. So from application point of view, you don't need to change anything. You still need to call PAM authenticate, and whether it is a local user or remote user, application code will from authentication point of view, it remains the same. Only from authorization point of view, we need to make a little bit of difference, right? So that's the only thing. Again, passwords. So as I said, we store the password, that is the BMC PAM Unix module. We store the password in a one-way hash, which is SHA-512. And that's a current security we are adhering, right? But at the same time, earlier, as I said, IPMI specification as such requires the password in clear text form, which means that when you store it in our file system, you need to encrypt and store it. And before we establish a session, we may need to decrypt the password, get the clear text password, so that we'll be able to establish a proper session. Whoever is trying to connect through RMCP plus, right? So and what we do for this one is, if there is any user who belongs to IPMI group, then along with storing the password in one-way hash, we also store the password in an encrypted form in a separate file. And that file is again, cipher should be follow AES 128 CBC with the digest algorithm SHA-256 with HMAC. And if the user belongs to IPMI group, there is also another restriction we need to enforce. And this is again as per the IPMI specification, that it has to be restricted to 20 characters. So now, from security point of it, I have seen people in OpenBMC asking, I want to get rid of this 20 character limitation, right? So you have a choice. Only thing what you need to do is you need to decouple IPMI, or you create a user without IPMI group. Then automatically the password for that user will not be stored in an encrypted form. And there is no restriction towards 20 character limitation. We can still go ahead and increase the number of character limit, and the password for that user will be stored in the regular etc shadow file under the one-way hash only. So
Richard, can you hear me okay?
yes.
I just want to make a comment about under the dbus interfaces, exposing the interfaces, and you talked about implementing a drop-in replacement. I just want to point out that we're kind of making up our mind whether or not we have a stable dbus API. The general consensus is that we don't. And so if you're going to implement an alternative user management application, you'd want to get something like that integrated into the project, so that our API being unstable, if it were changed, you'd have the community would be responsible for changing all of the APIs. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. It's not something that we've done a great job really defining, and so yeah, the API is not really considered stable right now. So if you're going to code to it and have your code be private and out of the tree, you're kind of doing so at your own risk.
Yes, that's a good point. Yes, that's a good point, Brad. Thanks for adding it.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Yep.
Hey, along those lines, any effort to get these user groups upstream to Redfish?
So when you say user groups, IPMI, SSH kind of stuff, right?
Yes. So let's say I have a user and I want to set a password more than 20 characters. I want to drop that user from the IPMI group.
Okay. So right now it's a build time stuff, but if you want, whenever you create a user from Redfish, you don't want to add it in IPMI group. It's one line change in BMC web code, but we don't support it as with a hash flag or something like that. Not right now, but the backend is already supported. So when you create a user, you need to give you pass the group details. As long as you don't pass the IPMI as a group details when you're creating a user, you will not have this restriction of 20 characters. So there are people who asked me earlier in our community email, and I believe certain people decoupled IPMI. I'm not sure who, but they asked me, and I told them saying that you remove this IPMI package from here, and in build time itself, you'll decouple IPMI, and everything, whatever the user you store, will be more than 20 characters password you can store. Does that answer your question, Gunnar?
Yeah, that helps. There's just no way at from the GUI or from the Redfish API to drop them from that group?
Yes,
Anyway.
today we don't do that one. There is no standard way of doing it. During that point of development, we thought of at least coming to OEM, OpenBMC community standard way stuff rather than it is not described in specification. But that point of time, many people, the answer to the question was. Many people still wanted all the groups, so we just left it during that time. But yes, if you want to decouple IPMI, yeah, that's one way we need to do.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. So this is the FastFor user manager, right? And in the interest of time, probably I'll try to not go in depth, but I'll try to see the interfaces, right? So when we can refer from our FastFor dbus interfaces. So we have a manager interface which exposes method like create user, rename user, and it is also having a property called as all privileges, all groups, and basically this too is done in such a way that if someone wants to extend the number of privileges available or number of groups available, they can do so. So all other applications, if they wanted to do, create a user with all groups, first can read this property, and they have to just say that, okay, I want to support all the groups, and they can do it. So this is basically a static compile time conversation kind of stuff, and based on that one, this will be exposed. And having said that one, we also have for each and every user attribute interface, which will tell that this particular user, belonging to which group, which privilege, and whether that user is fully enabled or not, and whether that user is locked for due to some failure attempt which has happened. And we also have a generic account policy, and this account policy is common across all users. So you can go ahead and configure what should be the maximum login attempt before a lockout has to happen, and what is the minimum password length we need to enforce for the user, and what is the account unlock timeout, and how many old passwords we need to remember, right, such that we will not accept the old password when someone is changing the password. And we also have one general API. As I said, we don't want application to go ahead and query a different API to get the details, right? So we call it as a get user info. And as long as you call this get user info and provide the username, irrespective of whether it is a local user or a remote user, it'll be able to provide us with the details about the user, in which privilege he has to be, and all the other user stuff we will have. We also have ldap configuration. Sorry for the diagram mess, but it is also having other properties, whatever is required from ldap point of it. And similarly, we also having the privilege mapper. As I said, this is used to understand from which group of ldap has to have which privilege stuff. So again, current default settings, whatever, if you are using OpenBMC directly, is you will have a no lockout as a default setting, and the minimum password length so far we have enforced is 8, and there is no unlock timeout. And right now, the remember older password default setting is marked as 0. So you can go ahead and change all the settings, even in default, or we can allow it. Currently, it is allowed to be changed from user level, but even in build time configuration itself, we can go ahead and reload the setting through our BB files.
So one question here. So is this account lockout is applicable even for the root user currently we have as a default?
So I'll answer your question in two ways, right? Right now, we wanted to exclude account lockout for root user. Reason is because it may be used as a denial of service attack. But having said that, from security point of it, having root user, enabling root user in your BMC itself is not a good idea. At least, today, yeah, we have root as one open BMC, but in production version, like if you take whatever we support, we remove all the default user accounts. So we don't have any user accounts, and we don't use root, that is user ID 0, for any of the login mechanisms at all.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
So this is stacked PAM concept, right? And three major modules are there. So one is PAM tally to just verify, manage the failed login attempt, right? So whenever if someone tries to call, or any application which is try to verify the authentication of the user is going to call PAM authenticate. So PAM tally will know that, okay, this particular user has already tried 2 times, and if you want to do the lockout or whatever mechanism, this PAM module is automatically taking care about all those things. Similarly, PAM Unix is used for all your local user authentication modules. So when you try to log in, first we'll search if there is any user locally present in the our BMC file system, right? And if there is any, that password match will happen. And if it fails, of course, it will go out. But if not, then we will, if your ldap is enabled, we'll go ahead and still check whether that user exists in a ldap account. And if that succeeded, then we'll still see that user is authenticated, and we will move on for the next stuff.
So is there any API to change the priority order? Like, as you said, it is starting with the local account and then going to the ldap. There is an API to change priority of that, starting with if customer do not want to use ldap as his, or Active Directory as his first account, so to reduce the time required for authentication.
Okay. Got it. So yeah, but that seems to be a valid question, right? Sometimes what happens is, if you're having a same username under both LDAP and local, and you want to prioritize your LDAP account as your first account, then yeah, you need to swap it. But we don't have an API, but it is just like a BB upon change in your built-in configuration. So yeah, if your question is, do we allow it for the user? No, we may need to add that kind of support if that is what we require. As
yeah,
of today,
my question was based on user this thing, not during build. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, you answered it. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So now coming to this same thing, right? This is again how you will update the password, and how the stacked PAM is helping us, to update the password, right? As I said, we are not using dbus API for updating the password. We are still using the PAM. So whenever an application tries to change the password, or a new password has to be encoded, it will call the API PAM change authentication token. And ultimately this will fall back to all the PAM modules, right? So we first do a strength checking through PAM cracklib. This is also basically Linux based one. Then we even do password whitelist history, just to make sure that in case if customer doesn't want to avoid ignoring like last 3 password, you should not use it again. Then those things will be done with password white history, right? And we also have this Unix, which is going to store the password in SHA, one-way hash SHA. But at the same time, if the user belongs to IPMI group, then what PAM IPMI save will do is it will try to store the same password in an encrypted form. But this module is already done in such a way that if the user you are trying to change the password doesn't belong to IPMI group, then what it will do is it will store password in one-way hash, and it will not enforce PAM IPMI save automatically. So your password for that user will not be stored in an encrypted form, and it will be leaving. Similarly, when we say this one, there are also other conditions, right? What if when we create a user, we created a user with IPMI, and over the period of time you want to remove the IPMI group for that user. So we have code in place when that happens, and automatically from the encrypted file, the password will be cleared out. But the catch there is, if you want to bring back the user again to IPMI group, unfortunately, you will not be able to log in at least from IPMI till you change the password again. Reason is because there is no mechanism for us to again encrypt the password, because we never store the password in a clear text or in encrypted form. So only when the user doesn't belongs to IPMI and you want to add that user back to IPMI, after that group add, you need to do one password change. Otherwise, your RMCP plus connection can't be established for that user, because just because you added that user to IPMI group doesn't mean that RMCP plus will work till you change the password. But it will not disturb your Redfish or whichever is using the PAM Unix. Other than IPMI, rest of your application will still work. Only IPMI, requires a password change update so that it can also catch that password. And as I said, this is the 20 character limit, right? And yeah, we may need to do that improvement. So now, Vasant, you asked the question like how, if you want, you want to swap the LDAP to be the first one, then the Unix, right? So basically, we just need to go to the CTC PAMD common auth file, and we need to just swap these lines so that LDAP will happen first, then Unix. So as I said earlier, you can do it in a BB append in case if it is a built-in configuration. But if you expect a user to be done, then based on the user request, we may need to come and update this file accordingly. So any one of the stuff we need to do. But as of today, we don't support this one. But I believe if there is a requirement, right, I think you can submit it to our forum, and the code can be merged, I believe. Based on
thanks.
discussion. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
So again, password updates cam, the file whatever we use is etcpamd.common password, and this is just for reference purpose. I keep it here, right? And moving on. So now, having said this one, after this authentication, right, authorization has to happen, right? So basically, all the application will issue the get user info, using which it knows all the groups and similarly the privilege level. And based on that one, it can try to see, okay, it is an admin user and it can allow up to whatever stuff it is. And similarly, or if it is a different level of privilege, it will allow that operation. But only the catch here is applications must enforce the authorization. So it's not directly by either by PAM modules or by common the fast user manager, right? So application must read it, and accordingly it has to do. And that's the same way for all interface specific applications, right? So that's the thing. And this authorization is common for everything except IPMI. So the reason the difference is IPMI again requires to read the clear text password from an encrypted file, right? So what it will do is when it receives the username, it will decrypt the file, take the password. Using that one, it will compute a hash and HMAP, try to establish a session kind of stuff. But just to make sure that, if there is already a user which is logged out, we don't allow that one to proceed from RMCP plus. What we do is we still do a PAM authenticate internally, just to make sure that logged out user is not establishing a connection even through IPMI also. So that code is also already existing. Okay. And this is IPMI. The only catch is we support only local user. So LDAP or AD, we don't support from IPMI point of it. And the reason is simple. You still require clear text password in order to establish a RMCP plus session. So, which is the reason, IPMI doesn't support LDAP or, AD or any other authentication methodologies, right? But Redfish, we already support all these things, LDAP and even MTLS. So from SSH point of it, I should have marked some star, but right now we allow SSH only for privilege admin, privilege users only. We don't allow SSH for other users. Reason is again, we are opening up a shell, and of course, yeah, even though you're opening up in that group, either you can't do anything at all, or if you're opening it up with your basic home group, you'll be able to do everything. So in order to avoid that one, we still enforce this one today in our OpenBMC code. But you can go ahead and configure if you want with your PP file based on the need kind of stuff. But although certain projects doesn't enable SSH, that is the drop beer direct SSH login as such, but SOL over SSH is still supported kind of stuff. Okay, so that's almost stuff, right? Now let me know any questions.
So is there any API or some sort of interface available to unlock the account immediately, or the IPMI account basically?
Okay, so unlock the IPMA account, there is no such thing, but you can do it from your Redfish. So you'll be able to unlock using the APIs provided in the Fastware User Manager. Once again. So this user logged for fail attempt is a property. So in case if you say your account unlock timeout, you have configured it as 0, then probably that user is totally locked, right? But you can go ahead and change this property again to false, and you will be able to log in again. And this is supported, but from IPMI, there is no such specific command. Probably if you want, we can implement a OEM command and do that. IPMA specification doesn't allow that one, but yeah, you can disable the user still from channel based stuff, which is supported in IPMI.
Okay, yeah.
So here all the documentation references, right, and almost everything is in community, right, and Fastware User Manager source, user dbus interfaces in Fastware dbus interfaces from IPMI, the modules which implement this IPMI user management code, the exact RMCP plus login PAM IPMI repo. Similarly, from Redfish, the account service, which maintains the user account, that is whenever you ask for creation of account or deletion of account. And similarly, authenticate module in Redfish. So these are all available, and I just put it in this references slide. I think then we can ask for questions.
Richard, I put a link into the chat here with the reference to the project's interface overview document. It talks about network interfaces and how to reach IPMI and stuff. It's kind of overlaps in a different way than your presentation. It might be useful to add that.
Sure, Joseph. I'll include that also then. I'll just copy it. One sec before I lose this one. Okay. Sure, Joseph. I'll just add those also in the references. Thanks, Joseph. So then in the backup slide, I just captured this one, and similarly how to update the default username and password. I have seen a couple of questions in our emailing community, so I just captured this in backup slide. As of today, our passwords are coming from local.conf.sample file. You can go ahead and do change your password in case if you don't like OpenBMC for root, or even if you want to add a few more default user accounts along with the password. This is the place you can go ahead and do. So this is still in the backup slide, just for people references I captured. In case any queries, I can shoot an email to me and I'll happy to answer.
Richard, can you hear me?
Yep.
This is Alexander Amelkan from Yadro. I have a question regarding ldap authentication. Is there any documentation on how to map ldap groups to OpenBMC privilege groups?
Okay. So unfortunately, there is no documentation as such because we thought that based on the LDAP group, you need to allocate it accordingly, right? But the privilege mapping from the Redfish schema, it is defining those things. So if you're just following that one, you will be able to do that. So you need to tell like, okay, this particular LDAP group has to align with admin kind of stuff, but the interface is available from Redfish.
Okay, I see. So I can do it via Redfish. Okay. Good.
Okay. So there is one question in the chat window. Can you provide a pointer on how to create the SHA for new user? Yeah, actually I normally the way I do is I just put it in the serial console, update the password, create the new SHA, and I'll just put it in the build system. But I even don't know like whether there is any direct way to compute the SHA. Brad or anyone in this meeting, in case if you guys how to compute this SHA for the OpenBMC as a password, right? Even though we are saying OpenBMC, this is the actual SHA-512 image. So the question is how we can create this one.
Yeah, there's a command that you can run. That thing with the $2 is actually two pieces. There's a random key followed by the SHA of the password, which includes that random piece. And so that random piece would be different every time. And there's a Linux command where you can either specify that random piece and it'll use that, or it'll generate it using your system's randomness, and then it'll basically spit out that string that you can just kind of cut and paste here.
Okay.
I'm gonna go look for the command.
Okay. Yeah, but generally what I do is, I'll just use the password command. Once the password is updated, I'll go to etc shadow, copy the particular share and put it here in case if I want to change it with some other password. So that's a mechanism today I use, but as Joseph pointed out, as long as you are able to give the randomness, I think you'll be able to get this one. Sorry, I don't have a direct answer for you, Michael. So any other questions?
Richard, one question, is there any reason why we picked up NSS LDAP for NSLCD? Like there are other repos which support those things, and I just want to know if there is any specific reason.
Okay, so I think I'm also not sure about the reason. It was the LDAP PAM module choose was done by IBM guys, but I believe they made a certain checking and then they came up to this one. But I don't have the direct answer. In case anyone in IBM here, most probably Ratan or Deepak will know. But
Sorry, I missed the question. What was the question?
so why we chose NSS ldap PAM module instead of any other stuff?
Which one should we have used?
So there are few other stuff. Even as I said, ENS, SSD is also there. So we even have certain stuff for SSD, but this is heavyweight, which is why we didn't put it under the regular stuff. We even don't use this one heavily in our products, but yeah.
Okay, I mean, I guess I'm not sure. I don't know. It's been a while ago, but it doesn't mean we can't we can't talk about having something else. So
Yes. Yeah, I forgot who asked that question, but answer to your question is that point of time there was a discussion. I remember we still asked this question, and there was some data towards that, but we are unable to recollect. But if there is anything changed, and if you have some other ldap in mind for which will solve some certain problems, I believe it should be fine to swap it out.
Okay, Richard.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't hear anyone. I put a link in the chat here with the I intend to move the project off of the root user ID and create a default admin account, and this is the link to the design for that. I mean, that's kind of work in progress.
Yes, that's a good one, Joseph. So actually in our stuff, we don't have any default account. So we actually even decouple root. So we cannot use even root user ID, and by default, there won't be any account when you build the image. So like that, the configuration has been changed. But yes, I'll have a look at that, Joseph. But I think that's a good direction we need to move on.
So whatever the applications are running into the open BMCs, are all of those coupled to the root user, or how do you differentiate? Like, how do you make sure the privilege?
So from privilege point of it, root is also like one of the user in terms of authentication. But we run all the application in root permissions. So that is a different word, right? We run the application in root permissions, but in order to interact with the application, you doesn't necessarily need to be a root user. So from application interface point of it, the privilege is what matters, whether it is a root user or a different username doesn't matter. But application as such itself start in root user permissions. So user ID 0 is used. There is also discussions. Joseph will be able to pitch in a lot using Cell Linux. We wanted to move out of that one. Running all the applications in root privilege. But Joseph, you can pitch in there.
Yeah, I mean, all the processes run as the root user, but like you mentioned, that's decoupled from the user account, from the root account privilege. So I mean, what I would sort of recommend is, as soon as you get your BMC set up, you either change it so it doesn't have the root user, or if you have to take the root user, then create another account and then sort of stop using the root user account to access the VMC. If that's what you're asking.
No, I understood that the good way Richard has explained about how it's being decoupled by running the application and by accessing the application. My main question was by running the application, and right now all of the applications are running as a root user. So is there a way, or like what are the efforts are we going through in making sure that we don't run application as a root user or with root privilege?
Oh yeah, okay. So there's some interest in moving away, so the application is not running as user ID 0, because that gives you an inordinate amount of privilege, more privilege than you need. But we need to work through the systemd service model for and create separate security domains within the BMC, sort of partition the processes, have web-facing processes and have host-facing processes, and give them exactly the privilege they need. That work just has not yet been done. I think there's an issue for it, but nobody's made much progress in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot. For the sake of time, I think we are at the top of the hour, and it's a wonderful presentation, Richard. Very detailed and wonderful. Thanks a lot, Richard.
Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Sai,
Thanks,
for this
Richard.
initiative.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. See you next time.
Sure.